We've been looking at some tier lists, and we think they're very unjustified.
I would put XP possibly average. XP was just a virus magnet.
So, we're actually not going to do a tier list, because tier lists are too old now. We're going to make a scale here. Okay, cool. So I think to get ourselves prepared, we need to look at some other tier lists. Alright, and see how they're doing it.
Windows ME. Oh god, do I even need to explain what this is?
Like, no offense to this guy, obviously, but they're putting Windows 1.0 in a C tier. I guarantee what this, he's going to put Windows ME in F tier. Yeah. You can't do that, alright? Windows ME is arguably way better. Like, I would actually go as far to say that Windows 1 is probably less stable than Windows ME. It was a very different landscape for Windows. I think we'll put it on the silly corner, and we'll put it on the border. And then you have Windows 2.
I forgot it existed, so I'm not really sure.
Just because of the default color scheme being light blue, we're gonna make a below worse. I don't care if it allowed you to install from a hard drive. I don't care if it had 20 more gigafucks than Windows 1. That blue color scheme automatically makes it worse. These are the guys that are inside Windows 2.0. They're three blokes doing all, you know? Alright, look at them. They're doing that, right?
Can you set it to 2 times speed now?
Yeah, sure, yeah. There you go.
Hello, I'm Tim Sweeney. Just a quick announcement that the Yellow Polar Bear now has a Discord server and Patreon. Link is in the description.
Windows 3.0. This sucks. Look, the calculator icon doesn't have colors. They were so embarrassed by the blue in Windows 2 that they had to recover from it. It's the first version of Windows to perform well, both critically and commercially, okay? But what does it do? What does it do? I don't know what any of this says. You know what? The UI was cool, but I guess this is more a case of like when you're comparing Windows 8 and Windows 8.1, like they're two kind of similar. I guess it is a bit of a step up, quite a big step up. We'll put it there. Windows 3.1 and like Windows 3.1 is just like Windows 8.1 really, so there's not much of a difference. If you were to use one or the other, it'd be 3.1. Windows still kind of sucks because it still runs on DOS. 95 is next.
It was important.
Yeah, whatever, it's important, but like Windows 98, you know? At the end of the day, you could also say that Windows 98 is kind of the downfall of Windows in a way because it just kind of had really tight integration with Internet Explorer. Windows 98 is just kind of better in every way. And yes, the stability sucked, but if you try Windows 98 second edition, it's kind of better. But then again, everything that the DOS kernel stinks.
I think the problem is just like 98 is better. There's so many things that are just incomplete as well, like the file explorer being garbage.
Miles better than 3.1? Yeah, we'll cut it some slack, I guess. It was important. It made Bill Gates make Jay Leno drive in the mouse. Windows 98. Way better, but yeah, really unstable. If you ever used normal Windows 98, it kind of sucks. If we do 98 SE, probably put it like here. This is the worst ranking system I've ever possibly done. Then we come to Windows ME. I mean, it's not necessarily bad, it's just Windows 98.
The thing is, like, I don't know about at the time, but like nowadays, it's like the stability problem isn't that bad.
But at the same time, I don't see why the hardware requirements would need to be much higher for something like ME, because under the hood, it's kind of similar to Windows 98. The only thing they changed was disabling DOS access. Like, you couldn't boot into DOS and they tried to hide it and all this stuff. And that made startup times kind of quicker. And it was also incredibly rushed. Microsoft employees have always come out and said, we had to rush it because manufacturers needed something, so they kind of push us out in literally less than a year. So I mean, it's not much better than Windows 98. Where would you put it? Like, how in front or behind would you put it from 98?
I'd really put it like a bit lower, like just slightly lower.
But then we come to the holy grail. Windows 2000 is pretty near perfect. If we were to look at all the operating systems in the NT kernel, this one is probably the most stable simply because it's the lightest. Like, if you compare the file explorer in Windows 2000 and Windows 7, Windows 7 is probably better. But the classic interface is still charming and simple. Windows 2000 is pretty close to James Rolfe territory, but the only thing that's keeping me from putting it at the top is simply just a lot of the user interface changes in later versions of Windows were actually really intuitive and great. But in terms of just raw stability, Windows 2000 is probably the best of the NT kernel. Then we have like a lot of people's favorite of all time, XP. I Are you an XP or a Windows 7 guy? Which one's like better?
XP.
What makes you put XP on top?
I feel like one big thing alone is just Windows Update. Literally just that alone is already pretty massive.
Yeah, 7 update wasn't particularly the greatest thing. But let's say you're an offline user, then what would you say?
XP runs on literally anything perfectly, but 7 requires like Vista requirements, you know?
But it's not like you could run XP on like a 95 machine. But I guess that's because hardware was evolving at a bigger rate in 2001. So I'd say XP and 7 are pretty close. I think we can agree we can put XP like right on the thumbs up. It's just everything's a lot bigger, it's a lot easier to use, and I think that's something that Windows XP had a huge advantage of because they focused so much on trying to make it super easy to use. And then ever since then, they've kind of gone backwards from that ever since Windows 8. I think XP was probably the easiest Windows operating system to use. And then we come to Vista. I didn't use Vista on a lot of physical hardware, but I have a father who, God forbid, had to. I only say God forbid because he used it on a computer that was a home basic oriented one. And for those who don't know, Windows Vista came in a bunch of different editions. And because there was such a big gap between XP and Vista, they made a slimmed down version of Vista. And it didn't end up working out too well because they kind of lied about the minimum specifications. So a lot of computers were sold at the time with Vista Home Basic could still barely run it. And also because Vista and XP made and handled drivers completely differently. So upgrading was not always the best experience. But if we want to talk about just the sole operating system as a whole, Vista is really underrated. Honestly, if you compare Vista and 7, under the hood, they're so similar that the NT number for Vista is 6 and the NT number for 7 is 6.1. And the only reason why 7 was so much better is, well, obviously because of the user interface improvements, but also because hardware was able to evolve in those 2 years. You were a daily driver of Vista. Were you home basic or home premium?
Premium. I thought it was great. Like, I literally never had issues.
Yeah.
And none of the negative thing. What about UAC?
Yeah, okay, yeah. UAC was very intrusive in the Vista days. It did it for literally everything. So it's kind of hard to say. I don't know how it ranks up against 2000. It's not at the top like XP is. Where would it go?
Oh, man. 2000. Like around there.
Feeling a strong 9 to a 10 on this thing.
I think Windows 7 is better than XP. He doesn't, because he's a bit. I think 7 we can put very close behind XP. Like, I think the changes in the taskbar were very good. The changes in the file explorer was very good, because Vista kind of tried to change the file explorer, and it kind of just hid some of the folders away. 7 kind of perfected it, and still what we're using today. Well, then here's when things are going to get a little bit controversial. Definitely not better than 7 or XP, but yet again, another one of those operating systems that gets way too much hate. If you saw our Windows 8 video, you would know that we definitely understand the user interface change with Windows 8 and why it was bad. And the fact that they also combined the full screen apps with desktop apps was really stupid. And you have 2 different calculators, a full screen calculator, Win32 calculator, a full screen Explorer, and a Win32 in Explorer.
And of course, the full screen weather app.
They should have definitely had like a desktop mode and a tablet mode. And that's what they kind of tried to do with Windows 10, which is great.
Yeah, it works a lot better.
Like if people just changed the default programs and if they change the start menu by adding like classic shell or something, we'll actually compare Windows 8.1. And if you take all that away, Windows 8 is actually really good. It is probably like one of the most stable NT ones. It is super fast, super low resource usage, and that's something that was completely overshadowed by the user interface at the time.
Now who's put this out?
There's people installing it on XP machines and have shown that it's pretty much just as fast, and it should be slower because it's running a newer operating system that has so much more features, but no one really understood how great the under the hood improvements were. Is it better than Vista?
I would say so. I don't know how to put it above 2000.
But it's definitely better than Vista. I guess all of these are kind of in the same area. Make 8 very small. But like there's 8.1. And then we come into Windows 10. I don't know what they were thinking with Windows 10. At the time, it was really exciting because you now have like a power button like right there. But Windows 10, super clogged. This is when telemetry was really high, installing random apps, being a huge resource hog. But at least they made the mobile apps windowed. I mean, there were some improvements, but I think I would say Windows 10 is probably the worst of the NT bunch. The classic theme is honestly better than the look of Windows 10.
Yeah, I think it looks ugly.
And then this is a hard one. What is better, Windows 10 or Windows 11? I would probably say Windows 11 is worse simply because look at that start menu. But the way that they changed everything, they completely changed this taskbar from the ground up. So when you click on taskbar, the fact that Task Manager wasn't on there when you right click on the taskbar to begin with was such a huge outcry around that they had to add that in an update, and now it's here. But there's still things like lock the taskbar that are not here as well.
You can't move the taskbar to the side either.
Exactly. I think I would say Windows 11 is worse than Windows 10. Windows 11 sucks. It just does.
Yeah, it's not that great. Yeah.
I think this is pretty fair. I think we set the record straight here about what's good, what's bad. Any final words?
I think personally that OS2 worked better.